what scale to use when we're going to play a solo. I know I've said on this channel before that when you're in a major key, you can use major pentatonic, and when you're in a minor key, you can use minor pentatonic, but also when you're in a major key, you can use minor pentatonic. Wait a second. That's probably why a lot of you are asking me this question in the comments. And first of all, I'd say, thanks for asking. You can ask questions in the comments here, and when I have time, I will try to answer them. Obviously, I can't answer them all, but I'm gonna answer this one. And it is, I will say, a little complicated, but it doesn't have to be. What makes it complicated is that there are so many options. But if we break it down to just the most common options, if you're learning classic, rock, or folk, or pop, or country music, there really aren't that many options, or blues for that matter. So let's just focus on those. We narrow it down, and now you'll already still have plenty of good choices to make when you're gonna play a solo. Let's start with what I think is maybe the most obvious, and that is that if we're in a major key, we can use major pentatonic. It makes sense, right? Major over major. Now, how do we know it's in a major key? That's a little more tricky, but it's not that hard. The trick is to identify a 1, a 4, and a 5 in this song. So if we look at a bunch of chords in a song, we can just scan our eye over the chords of the song and we can see maybe it has an E chord and an A chord and a B chord, and maybe it has an F sharp minor or a C sharp minor or something like that. And we look at, whoa, that's a lot of chords. But if we can identify where the home is, where it sounds like home is one thing. We can just use our ear to sometimes find that, right? And then we can sort of be a bit like a detective and figure out, okay, well, if that is 1, we make a hypothesis. If E is 1, is it true that the 4 from there and the 5 from there are also major chords? Because if that's true, then it is very likely to be E major. A lot of times people will say that the first chord is the chord of the key, or that tells you the key, and that is not always true. That drives us nuts when we hear that stuff. There are lots of songs that do not start on the 1 chord, so you cannot always use that method. A lot of the times you'll be right, but not always. So this is a much better method. If it is an ordinary major key song, 1, 4, 5 should be major. G, 1, 4, 5. And so there we go. We could use E major pentatonic. Let's hear what that sounds like. E major pentatonic over this simple jam track. This is from our Patreon group. This is just E major to A major. Simple enough, but it's great for practicing our E major pentatonic sound. Now let's shift gears and do the other fairly easy one, and that is that when you're in a minor key, well, you can use minor pentatonic. Makes sense. There's more complicated ones coming up, don't worry. Again, we can try to find the 1 chord by ear. We can look at the chords in a chart, right? We might see C minor, we might see G minor, we might see F minor, we might see some other chords, but we can try to identify by sound which one of those are home. Usually that's the fastest way. You can test the theory with minor as well. Now, it's a little bit more complicated because there are more variations in minor keys, but in its basic form, it would be a 1 minor, a 4 minor, a 5 minor. But very often you will find the 5 chord has been altered to a major chord. That's very common in minor keys. Still, let's keep it simple, right? We want to do basic principles. We want to do the most common things first. And we want to be able to find what is the 1 chord. What's the point of that? We want to find that so that we can know what scale to use. When we find the 1 chord, probably that's a very good scale choice to use. In this case, it was C minor, so C minor pentatonic. do the more complicated one, the one that all of you seem to be asking me about. And that is that you'll hear me often say that you can use minor pentatonic on a major key. What? Minor on major? Yeah, in fact, you've probably done it a lot already. You probably just didn't realize you were doing it. So what's happening there? Using minor pentatonic over major chords is the essence of the blues. Now, that would have been considered pretty crazy some hundreds of years ago, but the blues now is like, what, 100 years old. It's before we were all born. Maybe. And so it's normal to us now, right? It just sounds normal. We grew up listening to that sound, so it doesn't sound that dissonant. If anything, it just sounds kind of cool and gritty and interesting. There is contrast, right? Because we have a major chord and we have a minor pentatonic. What's the difference between those? Remember that a major chord has a major third, and minor pentatonic has the minor third. So those two notes, a half step apart, they are very dissonant, right? They grate against each other, but it sounds so cool and our ears are used to it. So we want to remember that when we're in a major key, we can use major pentatonic as we said, but we can also use minor pentatonic to get that bluesy sound when we want it, to get a bit of grittiness. And that might be why I love soloing over major chords, because I have those different options. I can easily use the major pentatonic or the minor pentatonic, or for our final option, switch back and forth. And there is something very interesting about this dissonance, because when we look at it, it's not as crazy as it sounds. Here's what I mean. First, have a look at the blue note in A major pentatonic. And what note is that? That's a C note, right? And we would say that the blue note is a dissonant note. It's not actually in the major scale. It doesn't officially belong to A major pentatonic. We just throw it in because it sounds cool. We like the dissonant. But what was that note again? It was a C. Now, let's look at what the notes are in A minor pentatonic. Notice what that note is. It's the C again. So a note that is ordinarily in minor pentatonic happens to be the blue note in major pentatonic. You know what? It is in fact a minor third. Put that another way, the blue note in major pentatonic is actually a minor third. And it's minor pentatonic that ordinarily has a minor third. So in some ways, what we're actually doing when we're mixing and matching these scales is that we're just using notes that we would normally use in major pentatonic, the blue note, and it happens to be the note that's ordinarily in minor pentatonic, so maybe it's not that crazy. Keep in mind that the best times to use this trick, where we're using minor pentatonic over a major chord, is anytime you want something to sound bluesy, right? So a blues song, obviously, or almost any kind of rock song, blues rock, country rock. Just remember that as soon as you do this, you will sound in a certain genre. And if you're finding these videos helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because that really helps other people to find these videos too. Now, the key to mixing major and minor pentatonic is to be able to see right wherever you are what the major pentatonic scale is and the minor pentatonic and how they overlap. B.B. King was quite good at this. Let me just show you one quick way to get started on this. And in our Patreon, we're going to examine this more. Think of it like this. On A major pentatonic, we would have extension shape here, which a lot of you call the box. And where's the root in that shape? It's right at the top. And so that also means that the minor pentatonic right there, without having to shift at all, is easy shape, right? It's there because that's the root A, so easy shape is here. So combine them, go up major pentatonic and down minor pentatonic. What a cool sound. It's kind of like the ear doesn't quite know exactly what it's listening to. Is it going to be dissonant? Is it going to be sweet? I don't know, but I do like it. Don't forget, if you've already completed my Guitar Soloing Like a Pro Book 1, Book 2 is now available, and it covers major pentatonic and how to switch back and forth in detail. We're also going to do that a bunch on Patreon this week, and you can get 7 days for free. The link to that is below. And I'm going to put another video on the channel here for you. You can check it out. My name is Blue Morris, and I teach guitar lessons right here in Vancouver, Canada. I'll see you in the next one.